Welcome to HB Reddit Stories. Today we will see stories of r/am I the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law she can never visit us or my sister-in-law again? My sister-in-law Alice is a single mom. She had her first child at 16 and her second by 19. Alice lived with her parents but was often mistreated by my mother-in-law Pat. My mother-in-law is a mean petty woman. She wore a light beige dress to my wedding and anything I do isn't good enough. My grandmother died and I inherited a double condo townhouse. My husband and I moved into one and the tenants next to us moved out about 6 months ago. Alice was having a hard time, so I told my hubby if she could keep it nice she could move in. Alice is working part-time and going to orthodontics assistant schooling. She's not a troubled person that my mother-in-law makes her out to be. In 6 months she hasn't been a problem and the boys are now 7 and 4, so not bad children, just boys. They remind me of my cousins. My mother-in-law was visiting Alice and the 7-year-old was outside playing and knocking over a planter on my side. Not a big deal. My mother-in-law screamed at him and called him a little N-word because he's a mixed child. I was so angry at her. I told my mother-in-law to leave the property and not come back to visit ever. My sister-in-law was shocked but cried, saying her mom often spoke to the 7-year-old like that. I told my hubby and he thinks we overreacted to his mom, and his mom just isn't used to children playing rough because they weren't allowed to. I told my husband a ball bouncing is not rough playing, it's an accident, and his mother's language was inexcusable under any circumstances, so for the boy's mental health that women is not allowed over. His whole family said I'm being dramatic and Alice has the habit of over-exaggerating everything, but I heard for myself what his mother said, and in 6 months of Alice living in the next condo to us she has never given me the reason not to trust her or think she's an unfit mother or bad person. Update: my mother-in-law is still insisting she didn't say that and I misheard her. My husband and I are still arguing over it because he thinks because his mother said it in anger because the child broke something expensive. I don't think that's a valid reason to say that to a child or anyone ever. Top comments: tell your husband he can visit his mom at her place. There is no excuse for using a racial slur no matter what the kid did. The fact that your husband wants you to ignore it is not something I would accept in a spouse. First of all, not the a-hole. Second of all, what is wrong with your husband? Next story. Am I the a-hole for offering cash instead of my labor for a wedding gift? I'm a hobby baker. I've gifted cakes to family and friends before, but I'm very firm about not taking orders. It is not enjoyable to me and would not be a profitable endeavor unless I was pursuing it as a career. These gifts are typically for birthday parties and the gift receiver gives me a size and a very general idea of what they would want it to look like, and I honor that in my own style and ability. A cousin approached me about doing her wedding cake as your wedding gift to us. After a brief discussion I confirmed that it would not be a good fit. After she persisted in arguing the reasons I switched tactics and offered to pay $250 towards her cake order placed with someone else. The amount came from it being the maximum I would have considered spending on her gift. She took a lot of offense at this, saying she can afford a cake, and I was implying she approached me because she can't. When I said I hadn't meant anything by it but that was my budget for a gift, she said it would barely cover a deposit for the kind of cake she would want. Top comments: not the a-hole. She said herself that $250 wouldn't even cover the deposit for the kind of cake she wanted. She basically wants you to bake a cake that is hundreds of dollars more than what you are willing to spend on a wedding gift that we can all assume will have to be meticulously decorated based on her vision, and it's not going to be perfect to her in the end, anyway. You are dodging a raging migraine with this one from what I can tell. She said it would barely cover a deposit for the kind of cake she would want. So she was expecting you to gift her a cake that was over $1,000? Not to mention your labor, etc. Not the a-hole, and I would go as far as to gift her one of those, a donation has been made in your name to, insert her least favorite charity here. Not the a-hole. My, how people become so unabashedly entitled when they're getting married. I think $250 towards the wedding cake is a generous offer. By her own admission, she wants you to bake some colossal $1,000+ wedding cake, with you paying for all the ingredients, of course. Not to mention the labor. As a gift. Do people not realize that they alienate their friends and family when they act like atrocious bridezillas? Next story. Am I the a-hole for not supporting at my wife when she started to cry at a Swedish tradition? I, 52M, and my wife, 47F, already have 3 kids, 13M, 13F and 20F, but a few months back we felt like we could use a breath of fresh air, so we signed up to take a foreign exchange student for a year. We got a 16-year-old Swedish girl that I will call Sarah, and that has worked very good. She's very open and honest and loves to share how things are in Sweden, how different things are here in the US. It was her birthday just a few days ago, so we gathered around the laptop while she was FaceTiming her family and they started singing in Swedish, but the song was particularly longer and more repetitive, so after the call I asked her about it and she explained that some families in Sweden sing a song where they talk about shooting, hanging and drowning the birthday person after they turn a 100. My wife overheard this and started to get annoyed because, in her words, it was inappropriate and extremely disrespectful to her household when she sang that without her knowing. My wife isn't naturally sensitive to bad language or words, but when she was born she had a 60-year-old dad that died when he was 96, so she is more conscious about how elderly people can feel just before they are about to die, and she felt like the song was making fun of people when they are old and sick. Me and the twins were embarrassed while standing there, so I asked her to calm down and that it's just a Swedish joke song that isn't even meant in that way, but she just started ranting about it was her house too and she shouldn't be afflicted to such derogatory language behind her back. Sarah obviously felt bad, tried to apologize and that she didn't mean to be disrespectful in that way and that it was just her family singing the song, but my wife just stormed out and yelled how she couldn't believe we had taken in a girl from such a cruel family. I tried to talk to her in our room right after I assured Sarah that she didn't do anything wrong and to just pay no mind. My wife was apparently more upset at me for not supporting and agreeing with her and started to cry about how I knew what she had gone through concerning her father but didn't back her up. The house has been extremely tense, especially when all of us are in the same room, but I really don't understand how a Swedish song could make her so upset. But I'm wondering if I should have taken my wife's side and been more sympathetic. Am I the a-hole? Update. I have read all of the comments. I was even up late at night to read them all, and I'm very thankful that so many people gave their input on my situation. I first talked to my wife this morning and showed her some of the comments after last night. At first she was pissed I wrote out our personal information, but I explained that I didn't write anything that could trace back to us and she calmed down. I first want to mention that no, my wife is not jealous of Sarah in that way, and I'm not attracted to Sarah since some comments said that. And also my wife is not psychotic or narcissistic. I agree it was horrible way to treat a guest, and we have already talked to our organization and they are currently looking for a new host family for Sarah. My wife is still upset but is starting to feel incredibly guilty and has apologized, but I understand that no amount of sorry will make Sarah feel safe again. Tensions are still high, but I showed Sarah some of the comments and she finds it hilarious and comforting, and I again assured Sarah that she didn't do anything wrong and dark children's songs are in every culture and doesn't harm anyone. And to answer some other questions, no, my wife doesn't usually do this, and she was starting to panic when I talked to her about what she actually said and how Sarah probably feel being trapped in our house in a foreign country. I also showed her the true meaning of the song by one of the comments, which caused her to almost have a panic attack that I needed to guide her through. We will investigate this further since I know some of you had theories about how it could be menopause, so we will look into that. Again, thank you for the advice on how to face this, but I want to mention that a lot of people assumed a lot of horrible things about my wife and I wanted to clear that up. P.S. I have already watched Midsummer with my buddies and yes, I enjoyed it very much. Top comments. Not the a-hole. Here's the joke. First verse. May she live for 100 years. Of course she'll live for 100 years. Second verse. When she has lived for 100 years, then she will be pushed. The Swedish word for push is the same as shoot. On a wheelbarrow. Third verse. When she has been pushed, shot, on a wheelbarrow, then she will be hung upon a horse. Fourth verse. When she's been hung upon a horse, she will be drowned, same as the word for drenched, in a lake of champagne. It is incredibly harmless and only becomes morbid once the person reaches their 80s, when the first verse becomes, in effect if not in fact, may she live for another 20 years at least. Your wife is still upset that a 97-year-old died. I mean, it was her father, but come on. The poor Swedish kid didn't do it behind your wife's back anyway. Was your wife jealous that the girl was getting attention on her birthday? Because this certainly got the attention back on wife. OP replies. Yes, I don't believe Sarah did anything wrong as well, and I'm also a bit mad at my wife, but it was more of how her father was suffering and that he himself said that he didn't want to keep living. I think then that when my wife heard the meaning of the song, she interpreted it differently and it triggered an emotion for her. Well, your wife definitely sounds American. And I say that as an American myself. She's being completely intolerant of something from another culture sung in a language she doesn't even understand, for Pete's sake. Your wife still has a lot of grief around the death of her father, it sounds like, which is understandable, but she needs to find a better way to process that grief than to take it out on an undeserving teenager she voluntarily took into her house. We commonly roast people here on their birthday or retirement and say things which, on the face of it, are quite rude. We also sing a children's song, Rock-a-Bye Baby, which talks about, when the bough breaks the cradle will fall / and down will come baby, cradle and all, which is essentially about the death of a baby infant. You are absolutely not the a-hole. Sarah did nothing wrong either. Your wife is the a-hole here. Not the a-hole, your wife is being a terrible hostess. She should not participate in foreign exchanges if she can't tolerate cultural differences. Not the a-hole. Your wife has now created a very unhealthy environment for Sarah, who is just a teen. Your wife needs therapy because her reaction to a child to say she is from a cruel family, the only person being cruel is your wife. A word of advice to both of you: if you're not in a mentally healthy place to host someone from a different culture, don't do it. You can't expect people from different places to operate in the same way as you and to call them cruel when they don't. I looked up the song and yeah, your wife needs help. If she can't process a song meant to be fun, used by a whole country, not a cruel family, because she had a much older dad, her singular experience does not trump a whole country. Also, for her to go off like that in front of Sarah for something Sarah herself didn't do, your wife just sullied the breath of fresh air you thought you wanted. Please do not host again. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my in-laws stay with us after they trashed my house last time? So here's the situation. A couple of years ago, my wife's F-34 brother, John, M-36, and his wife, Sarah, F-35, were going through a rough patch and needed a place to stay for a few weeks while they figured things out. My wife, being the caring person she is, asked me, M-37, if they could stay with us temporarily, and I agreed because family is family, right? Well, that few weeks turned into nearly 4 months. During that time, they completely took advantage of our hospitality. John treated our house like it was his own personal man cave, leaving trash everywhere and never helping with chores. Sarah wasn't much better. She kept borrowing things from our kitchen and bathroom without asking and never replaced anything. Our guest room looked like a tornado hit it when they finally left. The worst part? They had 2 kids, 5 and 7 at the time, and while I get that kids can be a handful, they were out of control. They would run through the house at all hours, break things, and scream over every little disagreement. My wife and I repeatedly asked John and Sarah to rein their kids in, but it always fell on deaf ears. After they moved out, it took us weeks to clean up the mess they left behind, and we even had to replace some broken furniture. My wife apologized, and we agreed that we wouldn't put ourselves through that again. Fast forward to now, John and Sarah are once again having issues and asked if they could stay with us for a little while they figure things out, again. My wife immediately said yes, but I put my foot down and said absolutely not. I reminded her of the disaster that was their last stay and told her I wasn't willing to go through that again, especially since they hadn't apologized or acknowledged how badly they treated our home the last time. My wife is upset, saying I'm being heartless and that family comes first. She thinks I should give them another chance and says I'm overreacting. But I feel like I'm just setting boundaries. We have 2 kids of our own, and I don't want them to have to deal with the chaos that John and Sarah always seem to bring. Now my wife is giving me the cold shoulder, and her family thinks I'm the bad guy for not helping out in a time of need. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to let my in-laws stay with us after they trashed my house last time? Top comments. Not the a-hole, of course. What in the world is wrong with your wife? Does she routinely make decisions that will affect you without consulting you? I can't imagine being so thoughtless toward my spouse. Opie replies. She often never consults me about decisions that involve me. That is one of the things that annoys me the most. Not the a-hole. Her family considers you are the bad guy. Why don't they help? They can give them money or take them in their house. Not enough place. One child with mummy in a house, the other with daddy in the other house. Problem solved. Not your problem. You helped them for 4 months and you received nothing but a disaster. They were disrespectful and you deserve better. It's a 2-yes situation and you said no. So she can't let them come in. Maybe time to take a front door camera if you don't have one, to record what happened in front of your home, if she invites them when you're working. Just in case. Opie replies. Everyone seems to forget about me letting them in the first time as soon as I refuse the second. They are all so unappreciative. Next story. Am I the a-hole for locking the pantry to stop my roommate from eating all my food? So, I, 26F, live with 2 roommates, and one of them, Jess, 28F, has a bad habit of eating other people's food. At first, it was small things like a handful of chips or a piece of fruit, and I didn't really care. But lately, she's been eating entire meals I've prepped for the week, snacks, basically everything. I've confronted her multiple times, and she always apologizes, saying she'll replace it, but she never does. I've asked her to just respect what's mine, and she'll agree, but the next day, something else goes missing. It's driving me insane because groceries are expensive, and I don't want to budget extra just to feed her. I finally got fed up and bought a small lock for the pantry I use and started keeping my dry goods and snacks in there. I also cleared out a section of the fridge for my food and labeled everything that's mine. Since I installed the lock, Jess has been super passive-aggressive, saying I'm treating her like a child and making the house feel uncomfortable. She even made a sarcastic comment in front of friends about me putting everything under lock and key. Now, the other roommate, Sarah, says she understands why I'm frustrated, but she thinks I took it too far by locking up my food and creating tension in the house. I honestly don't think I'm in the wrong here, but now I'm second-guessing myself. Am I the a-hole for locking up my food to stop Jess from eating it, or did I overreact? Top comments. Why is it always the person who reacted to negative treatment being blamed for creating tension? You didn't create this situation. Jess did. Sarah was happy to let it go on because it was only affecting you, not her. Now that it's affecting her though, it's easier to blame you for it instead of the actual person who caused the problem. You are absolutely not the a-hole. You repeatedly asked Jess to respect your personal belongings, and she repeatedly didn't. You're simply putting up a physical boundary to stop her from crossing the one you put in place with words. Sarah needs to be on your side on this unless she wants to be next in line to start having her food stolen. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel HB Reddit Stories.